That's what you're going to tell me. Yeah. That's all right. I think everybody else knows now too. Yeah, I ran into it a little bit ago.
Good evening. Yeah. We're starting a new topic tonight. It's going to last 13 weeks. It's the 13 C's of successful Christian living. And I didn't put the word successful up there because it was too long and was cramping my artistic style. So, but we are focusing on successful Christian living, and tonight's topic will be commitment. I guess I have to turn it on again. So this series of lessons is going to focus on successfully living the Christian life. We're going to look at traits or characteristics that we as Christians ought to have, and that if we do have them and nurture them, that they will help us be more successful in the long run. All of these will start with the letter C. So this is alliteration gone wild. Preachers will do this a lot all the time, especially when they're learning how to preach. They'll tell them, here's your 3 points, and make them start with the same letter. And so they might get up there and say, today's sermon is about latitude, longitude, and levitation. Now, I don't know how you could take those 3 words and make a sermon out of it, but that's alliteration there. We're doing the same thing with the letter C here. And one of the things that we're going to be, that's not a lesson, but we have to do it, is we're going to be creative with the letter C. And the word commitment is going to be one of those words that we're going to do that to tonight. Commitment is important. It's an important part in everyday life. If you're trying to buy a product or have somebody come in and work on your house or fix something or something like that, you want to do business with companies or people who are committed to excellence. Committed to okay just doesn't have quite the ring to it. You call a plumber up and say, yeah, we won't really go for excellence, but we'll try not to be mediocre. We probably look for another plumber in that situation. Being an athlete requires a commitment. 1 Corinthians 9:24-27, Paul talks about running the race so that we win. He's actually modeling that on the ancient Olympic Games. Everybody runs, one wins the prize, and here's how you need to train and take care of yourself in order to win that particular prize. It requires a commitment. Now, at lower level athletic events, like 5th grade soccer or something like that, talent's probably the most important aspect of that. The most talented players on the field or in the game probably going to win it. However, the higher level of competition, talent starts to equalize out. In the NFL, everybody's talented. They're all really, really good. But the way that you become the greatest is you basically have to outwork everybody else that's playing your position or playing on your team. So, that's a commitment to excellence right there. When we marry, we want our partner to be committed to the marriage. There was a thing in I think it was the late 80s, early 90s, where people were messing around with the marriage vows when they were getting married. Most marriages, when they do the vows on it, have a phrase like, until death do us part, or as long as we both shall live. Some people were changing that live to as long as we both shall love. That's kind of creepy, isn't it? I mean, basically it's, I got my ticket halfway punched on the way out of here type of a thing. You know, this isn't a marriage. This is 3 years of dating with paperwork. You know, is that what you want in a marriage partner? And then when someone commits to us, or, you know, are we willing to offer the same in return? You commit to an employer when you take a job for them. They commit to you, paycheck, humane working conditions and things like that. You commit to them time and energy. And if you stop showing up or are haphazard about it, at some point you will be called into somebody's office and you'll have a little chat with them. One company I used to work for, they called this a come to Jesus meeting. That's, you know, because it was basically, this is your call to repent here, Chief, and if you're not going to do it, there's a door, don't let it hit you on the way out, kind of a thing. So we expect commitment in all of these various scenarios. Definitions. I always do this. I looked at a lot of English definitions, and this was the best one that I found, and there's a problem with it. But let's go through the definition first. An agreement or pledge to do something in the future, kind of like a promise. So if I'm committing to work for an employer, I'm committing to show up, I'm committing to do whatever tasks that they're asking me to do as long as I hold the job. That's the commitment we're making. The state or an instance of being obligated or emotionally impelled. So the idea here is commitment has this idea of, I need to do this for my own worth or my own emotional state, my own being, or because it's the right thing to do. There's a value into it. The act of committing to a charge or trust, for example, consignment to a penal or mental institution. You know, people get committed to the nut house. They get committed to jail. Not the definition we're looking for. The thing that I think is missing in this aspect, this definition of commitment, and all of the English definitions I looked at were kind of had the same liability, is the idea of entrusting. So when you get married, you're entrusting your heart to another individual. They are entrusting their heart to you. What are you going to do with that trust? Same thing with employer. They're entrusting you to do this job for a paycheck, and you're entrusting them to make sure that the paycheck shows up on time. The working conditions are humane and all that kind of thing like that. So there is this idea of an entrust, and in fact, it's really fundamental to commitment, in my opinion. Why would you want to commit to something and not really do it? How we feel about a commitment correlates directly to how much we trust the one making the commitment to deliver on that commitment. So if I've made a commitment to Art to do something 5 times and I failed to do it 5 times, and I'm now committing to the 6th time, what do you think the odds are of him trusting that? Track record says ain't gonna happen. I mean, that's what you're going to look at. The track record says that ain't going to happen. It's going to be that, you know, it's going to be more of the same unless something really radical has happened, and then it's up to me to prove that it has happened. When 2 people get married and one of them's been married 5 times and one of them's been married 6 times, and they get to the line in the vows where it says, till death do us part, what do you think the odds are of them making it that far? Maybe if one of them shoots the other. You know, there's no track record there that shows that we're really going to make this type of a commitment. So, the use of the word commit or commitment in the Bible. The word commit is used 48 times in the New American Standard Bible, spanning both Testaments. And in the NSB, commit is used overwhelmingly. The biggest use of commit refers to the commission of sin. So to commit adultery or to commit sin or all of these types of things, that's the big use of the word in there. But when you think about it, that's kind of appropriate. That's intent. That's my track record. That's the thing I'm going to do. That's the thing that's going to show my character. The word commitment is not found in the NASB, the New King James Version, or the ESV translations. It may be found in other translations, but of those 3, which I know people in this congregation use those, and the NIV and some others, it's not found in there. However, when we look at synonyms, and that's a fancy way of saying this means the same thing as this other word, Words like constancy, loyalty, allegiance, dedication, faithfulness, that's a biblical word. Fidelity, steadfastness, another biblical word. These are, words that kind of mean the same thing as commitment. So technically, it's not really used in there, but words that are like it in meaning are in fact used in the Bible. So we're going to, it's an appropriate topic for us to talk about. Any questions or comments before we go any further? I want to give you your chance to talk. Some biblical examples of commitment. I didn't put this up there because Scott delivered that sermon on Sunday, but it was one that kind of came to mind. The example of Ruth. You recall the story from the lesson on Sunday, and if you've read the book, Naomi and her husband and her 2 sons leave Israel, famine, go to Moab, live there for a while. The sons marry Moabite women. All 3 of the males end up dead, and then Naomi has to go back to Israel. And her daughters-in-law go with her, and she tries to talk them out of it. Stay here, have families, get married, have families, be around the people that care about you. And Ruth wouldn't do it. Ruth was committed to follow Naomi into Israel. Doesn't really tell us why, but we see in Ruth 1:15 through 18, it's don't entreat me to leave you. And where you go, I go. Where you sleep, I sleep. Your people, my people. Your God, my God. And Naomi, when she saw that Ruth was determined to do it, didn't try to talk her out of it anymore because she saw she was committed. The example of God's commitment towards us in Hebrews 10:23. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. Now that faithful is God being committed to us. The let us hold fast is us being committed to God. That's a good relationship there. When each party in the relationship can commit to each other, that's a good relationship. So that's what we're being called to do in that passage. Christ. For you have been called for this purpose, since Christ also suffered for you. Okay, that's commitment right there. Leaving you an example for you to follow in his steps, who committed no sin. There's a not commitment in there. Nor was any deceit found in his mouth, and while being reviled, he did not revile in return. While suffering, he uttered no threats, but kept entrusting himself to him who judges righteously. Going to the cross was an act of faith. Christ knew what was coming. He had at least some understanding of this, that this was going to be death, and yet the Father had made promises to him, and so ultimately, he entrusted himself to the Father to deliver on the promises that had been made. More examples of commitment. Timothy, 2 Timothy 2, verse 2, and the things which you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, these entrust to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. That entrust is commitment there, and in fact, in the King James Version, they usually translate that word commit. So again, it's the idea of give it to somebody who will take it and follow through with it and deliver what needs to be done here. Sin. First, 2nd, 3rd John, he's talking about pattern of behavior. It's not that you just sin, it's that you are committed to the idea of sin. And the result of it is a form of slavery to sin. And we have to have a redeemer to kind of get out of that situation. Questions or comments? Our commitment to God, Psalms 37, verse 5. Commit your way to the Lord, trust also in him, and he will do it. And then in 1 Peter 4:19, therefore let us also who suffer according to the will of God entrust their souls, or let those who also suffer according to the will of God entrust their souls to a faithful Creator in doing what is right. So Peter is calling on us to entrust our souls the same way that Christ entrusted himself to the Father, when he was facing the cross. So that's discipleship there. That's doing what the master teacher did. Okay, questions or comments? Okay, commitment is a choice that we make. How interesting. We just spent 6 lessons talking about making decisions. This is a decision that we make. We considered the example of Ruth. Why did she choose to follow Naomi? You know, what did she choose when she followed Naomi, and why did she choose it? Nobody's under any illusions here right now. She's going to be an alien amongst people who historically have not liked Moabites anyway. And she's going to be with a widow who cannot take care of herself, so she's going to have the responsibility of taking care of the widow and herself. But she chooses to do this anyway, probably in part because Naomi's going to need the help. But also there may have been something about Naomi's character that spoke to her, or the fact that Naomi was a follower of this God that seemed to have compassion for people that spoke to her. But she made this particular choice and didn't really know where she was going to wind up at. Usually when we choose to make a commitment, it's because this commitment offers a purpose, a hope, and or a desired outcome. And in fact, I would go so far to say something that doesn't offer any of these things doesn't require a commitment or deserve a commitment. You know, it is one thing to commit to your favorite sports team. What happens when they lose? They always do at some point. What happens when they lose? Well, depending upon the level of commitment, it might be a near suicide experience. Or it might be, we'll get them next year. We'll get them next game. Or, you know, they played better than we did. You know, no big deal. It is a game after all. But that's not that's not a real commitment then, is it? It's not like a life or death situation. When you committed to your spouse, number one, you probably didn't really understand everything that was entailed in that, and that's okay. You're going to learn on the job, and you're going to adapt, and you're going to get better at it, you know, or life will be difficult for you. You know, but why would you do? Boy, there's a lot of snark going on over here. I mean, I'm just saying, okay? Something, you commit to it because it matters. That's why you do it. You committed to the job because something about this mattered. Now, you know, at a fundamental level, the thing that might be is that paycheck. And maybe I want to commit to that job a little bit more because I want that paycheck to get a little bit bigger. You know, we understand that type of a sense, but also there's a sense of personal worth or a sense of purpose that goes along with this. The military, when they're advertising on television, trying to get people to enlist, purpose is what they focus on. I mean, think about this. What they're wanting you to do is to sign up to put boots on the ground, wear all of like 60 pounds of gear, carry this rifle, or drive this tank, or do something at that, and shoot at people that are trying to shoot at you. You know, this is not a video game. You know, but there is the purpose of defense of home, family, and country. That's a noble purpose. You know, the world's a nasty place sometimes, and we kind of need that. Hope. There's a reward that we're kind of expecting out of this. That's one of the things that everybody who gets married is looking for. Somehow or another, there is some form of reward that goes with this. And if you do it right, you get rewarded with it. Not in ways that you can necessarily measure. Like I can't tell you that my marital satisfaction is a 42 on a scale of 50. You know, that's, you know, because if I say that, first of all, she's going to want to know why isn't it 50 on a scale of 50? And I think that's a legitimate question. Yeah. But, you know, there's a hope that goes with this, a hope for this particular reward, a hope for a desired outcome. Being a Christian is no different. And we'll get into that in a minute. Go, Gary?
Clarification. So it is a 50 out of 50?
Yes. It's 56 out of 50. Yeah.
I've worked with people that didn't commit to the job so much, the money. It got to the point where they loved their job or they really got into what they were doing. I was thinking about a musician. He didn't just get out on stage to play for money. You just
Yeah.
enjoy the interaction with the people and making the music. So I think sometimes you have people that just have that commitment that they love what they do.
Yeah, they're not mutually exclusive. I loved what I did for a living as a software developer, and I was very intent on doing the best possible job I could, you know, in the smallest amount of code, the quickest amount of time and stuff like that. But I always took the paycheck too. So, you know, they're not mutually exclusive. But you do want to have, you know, that's kind of the difference between a job and a career in a lot of ways is, you know, you're getting paid for both of them, but one of them has a higher sense of purpose than the other. You know, I used to be a broiler cook at Ponderosa. That was my higher purpose there was just to get paid. You got to have money to live. That was my higher purpose. I was cool with that. You know, when I became a software developer, that was fun, and I still got paid. So they're not mutually exclusive at all. But the bottom line is, we don't make commitments as a general rule. We don't commit to things that have no value to them, that have no purpose, have no hope, or no desired outcome to them. That doesn't need a commitment. It's not even worthy of a commitment. All right. A commitment is a measure of our integrity. Have you ever made a commitment without counting the cost of that commitment? If you've carried a credit card and used it, the answer to that question is yes. You know, everybody who gets a credit card, nearly everybody, I can't say everybody does. Some people are actually born smart. But one of the first things that you do with a credit card is you overuse it, don't you? And then you find out that interest rate out there is astronomical. And now you have to learn how to, you know, control your expectations and be a little bit more sensible about how you use this tool. That's the cost of it. But when we're making a commitment, we do need to consider the effort it may require. And we also need to consider the fact that we don't know all of the effort that it's going to require, but we have at least some idea of what it is. In Luke chapter 9, verses 23 through 26, Christ says, "Then he said to them all, if anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. For whoever desires to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. For what profit is it to a man if he gains the whole world and is himself destroyed or lost?" Do you know that nobody has ever taken that deal in verse 25? Now the idea, you know what, I will be lost if you just give me the entire world. We never even made the deal. We always sold cheaper, much, much cheaper than that. But it's still a valid principle. There's a cost of being a Christian, and there's a cost or commitment to not being a Christian. And you kind of have to look at, which one are you willing to pay? Which one offers you the greater purpose? That should be a factor of that decision as well, I think. Commitment requires trustworthiness. The concept of trust no one is a difficult way to live. And in the outline, the author had an illustration of a man who was talking with his 3-year-old son and put him up on the kitchen table, and he said, "Jump and I will catch you." And the boy jumped and the father didn't catch him. And he said, put him off the table again, and he said, "Jump, and this time I will catch you." And he didn't catch him again, and he did it a third time, and he still didn't catch him. He says, "Son, I have just taught you a valuable lesson. Trust no one." You can't live life that way. Now, when you think about a con artist or a confidence game, the way that works is they try to build trust first with their mark, get in good with them, and then once we've established this relationship, that's when we start to get the goods that we actually came here for all along. But it's still a very difficult way to live, and betrayal of a trust is devastating. It's a common human experience. How many of you can remember the first time as a child somebody violated your trust? Is there anyone who did not have that experience? The even worse side is when you're the one who did it to somebody else. Many of us have been on both sides of that particular coin. It is devastating to do that, but we have to learn, it's a lesson that we learn as, painful as possible. The word trustworthy is used 7 times in the New Testament, in the NASB New Testament, and all 7 uses are by Paul. And the most common way Paul uses it is he says, this is a trustworthy saying. So what's he saying there? Here's a statement you can take to the spiritual bank. All of those passages there, I looked them all up, but I don't remember them all now because they're all jumbled up. But that's all 7 of the places I think that he uses that. Commitment requires endurance, and endurance requires motivation, study, and training. What is it about endurance that we need it? It's a sense of perseverance that's going to take us through even when things start to get uncomfortable. Nobody in the history of the human race that I know of, nobody has ever accidentally run a marathon. Can't do it. 26.2 miles. Do you have any idea of the stamina it takes to do that? I trained for one once, back when I was around 30. It was like autopilot. You had to be doing the same thing at the same time every day, and you varied the length. I think the longest distance that I ever ran in training is I ran 18 miles, and I ran that twice, not back to back. That was a couple, 3 weeks apart in those 2 particular, situations. But that's what it takes to run a marathon. It takes months of training to do that, and this is just for the first time. Now, most of the people who run marathons are not out there to be world-class athletes or competitive. You know what they want out of the marathon? Cross the finish line. That's the goal, to be able to do that, to cross that finish line. Now, most marathons that are run in this country will also have an associated time with it, that if you beat this time, you can get an invite to the Boston Marathon, which is the holy grail of marathons. New York City, they want to be, but they're only number 2 on that list. Now, you want a number in Boston, this is the time you have to beat. But most people who run marathons are only interested in getting across the finish line, just to say that they can do it. But it requires motivation, study, and training. You are going to run and build your endurance. You are going to work on your form. You are going to study your nutrition. You're going to study your rest patterns. You're going to tweak things constantly, trying to get every ounce of energy available to run the marathon, because it's that grueling. Did you know, I watched a special on this before the Olympics. When you run, your head kind of bobs up and down. And when Olympic training, they have to actually put you on camera and measure that. So, because if you're doing this, you're probably efficient, but if you're doing this, all of that extra this there is energy you are wasting that you cannot afford to waste if you want to complete this race. It takes that much energy to do it. And so they're going to work on your form to try to stop that, do that. So even little things like that. So what motivates us in our race here? Well, love. 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7, love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. So what are you going to need to run the Christian marathon, if you will? That. You're going to need the endurance to it. You're going to have a motive. There has to be a purpose, a hope, or a reason for you to do this. That's why we're on this particular course. Also, Romans 8:24-25. For in hope we have been saved, but hope that is seen is not hope. For why does one also hope for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, with perseverance we wait eagerly for it. And so the idea of hope is there's an expectation out here that I'm going to receive this reward. I don't have it right now, but that's the thing I want. And if I run this course and have the endurance and follow through on my commitment to this plan of action, that's my hope. That's what I'm going to get. And so you kind of want to hope it enough that you can practically taste it, I think. Sometimes that's a little bit difficult when we're all, wrapped up in this world, but that's what we want right there. Commitment produces a reward. We commit because it will be worth a reward. And in fact, sometimes commitment is the reward. Let me give you an example. Several years ago, Jackie was having major surgery. This is back in the days when Mount Carmel West was a thing. You know what I'm talking about? Because they've shut that down and it's now Grove City. She was in Mount Carmel West and she had this major surgery, and she was, of course, under anesthesia, looped out of her mind, couldn't, didn't know up from down or anything like that. And I'm sitting in her room and I'm just reading a book. Not trying to watch TV because she'll wake up every once in a while, flip the channel or something like that, and I didn't want to disturb her. But every once in a while she will wake up and she'll say, "You don't have to stay here." And I said, "I know." And I just kept reading my book. And we went through the whole afternoon like that into the early evening, and she's still kind of not out of it or anything like that. But she's woken up several times and said, "You don't have to be here." And I said, "I know." Finally, they're looking in the room at me like, "Dude, you need to go home. You need to get out of here." And so I finally went on out, got in the car, went home. The next morning, I'm up and I'm on my way to see her, and this thing rings. And I look at it and it's her. And I said, "Hello." And she says, "What are you doing?" "I'm on my way to see you." "Well, where are you at?" "I'm 2 floors below you on the elevator." "Well, hurry up and get here." That's 2 different stories, wasn't it? The day before, she was looped out. Now, she didn't have a clue what anything was going on. And then now, all of a sudden I'm needed. And you know how I reacted to that? I was pleased. I was absolutely pleased by that because I was needed. She needed for me to be there. And so I got up in there and, it was a wonderful reunion, yada, 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 and she lived and all of that, But I was needed. It paid off. She had her gallbladder taken out, and that was kind of a rotten thing that happened to her. 11 months later, I had the same thing. And so, she was needed. That was part of the commitment, that process there. But in this life, there is a reward. John 10:10, "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and might have it abundantly." Now, is it always going to be abundant? If you're older than about 6 days, the answer is no. It's not. There's times when it's going to be kind of wretched, kind of uncomfortable, maybe even painful, or drive you up the wall or something like that. But that's not, that's not all that there is to life. There is joy in the life, and we're entitled to have it. And then, of course, in eternity, Revelation 2:10, "Do not fear what you are about to suffer. Behold, the devil is about to cast some of you into prison, that you may be tested, and you will have tribulation 10 days. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life." There's a lot of words in that passage that are not fun words. Suffer, devil, prison, tested, tribulation, death. And that's pretty much laying it out there. This is about as bad as it can possibly get. Now, John in this passage is talking to first century Christians about persecution. They've already seen all of this. They know he's not lying or making this up. They know this is a distinct possibility because they've seen it already. And they're about to experience it again. And in fact, if he's writing this around 96 AD, we're going to be doing this for 200 years. The first century church is. But there's the reward in eternity. And I think it's okay, and in fact, expected, that we focus on the eternal aspect of that. That's the thing that, if that's in the crosshairs, then anything between us here and now and that reward can be endured. And that's why he writes things like this, or the Bible repeatedly mentions eternal life, and this is what you should be focused on. So, commitment, does it help as a Christian? It's required. It is required. We're going to make a commitment on it. We're not going to be always successful in this. We're not going to be perfect in it, but we're going to be on the path. We're going to be in the race. So, any questions or comments? Yes.
We've been talking kind of the commitment for us, right? That we're committed to God.
Mhm.
It's like this is also His commitment to us.
Yeah.
That if we're faithful, that this is the commitment. It's a two-way street. It's a two-way.
Exactly.
commitment.
Exactly. And the best commitments work that way.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things that's special about being married, isn't it? Because you're committed to this particular person, and he or she is committed to you. So. Any other questions or comments? I think I'm out of slides. Yep, thanks. So we'll pick up next week with another topic.